If life is coming up, don't make big business decisions because you'll be sorry. So my first book, I got this wonderful review. They said the quote was impressively original. And then the next review I got was, there is nothing original in this book at all. So you just have to say, okay, this is art. This is how the reviewer is reporting how it felt to them. That has nothing to do with my identity or my worth or anything else. It's something like a 19% of traditionally published books sell less than 12 copies. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And I think that's one of the things my characters do, is they look into themselves and find the truth and act on it.
Hi.
Hi. I've never done TikTok Live before, so I was like, how does this work?
Oh, really? Well, I'm glad I get to be with you in this first time experience.
Yeah. All right.
And everyone who is here, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Evelyn Puerto. She wrote The Girl Who Broke the Dark. That's the book we're going to be talking about today. And this is part of a series of a podcast called the Indie Show Podcast. She is our third guest. And I'm super excited to talk to you about this book. I finished it yesterday.
Yay. Just in time.
Yeah, just in time. So a quick personal intro. Welcome to the Indie Shelf Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for writing your book. Tell me a little bit more about you.
Oh gosh, that's a loaded question. I think I'll start by saying when I was in school, I hated writing. And if you had told me I would ended up writing, I would have said, hey, you're nuts, because I just hated it. And looking back, I think it's because in school, you had to write what they were telling you to write about. And there was always that pressure. Somebody's going to give you a grade. And it just was hard. So I stumbled into writing much later in life, and here we are.
Well, introduce your book, The Girl Who Broke the Dark. Tell us a little bit more about it. Give us the elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch is, we have a princess who has to go wake up a cursed prince. And she does this and finds out that waking up or breaking the curse is just the beginning. And from there, the story takes on its own life. We go far away from Sleeping Beauty into something completely different.
Absolutely. And that is a good way to start our conversation, because we're going to dive into magic, the theme of self-sacrifice, redemption, world building, and so much more. Let's do the basics.
Okay.
How many books have you published?
How many books have I published? I have published 6, 4 in one fantasy series, and then The Girl Who Broke the Dark and the sequel that came after it. And I'm hoping to launch the sequel to that one in September.
Oh, nice. Okay, it's coming in. That's one of my questions. Soon. How long is the series?
It'll be 4 books.
Okay.
I seem to write in quartets. I don't know why.
Interesting.
But
okay.
yeah, it'll be.
I noticed that this is the book you market the most in your website. It's the one that you sing. I didn't even know you had written other books. Why is that?
Well, okay, so it's true confessions time. I really struggled to market that other series. And, I got some great reviews, literary reviews, not just from readers, but literary reviews. The first book of that series won a reader's favorite award. Another book won some awards. I struggled to market it, and finally came to the conclusion that I was marketing it wrong. It really shouldn't be marketed to YA, that it just didn't fit that. And the cover was wrong, okay, which is an expensive mistake to make. So I launched on recovering them, and it has taken a year. I'm now on my 3rd cover designer, and part of that was bad choices on my part, and it's just taken a year. So because of that, I haven't been pushing that series as much. Also because I'm really trying to ramp up to this launch, but we are on the fourth cover of that series. We are very close, and I'm going to start doing more with that series once the new covers are out.
What happened with the cover? I guess what was wrong with it, or what I guess lessons learned can you share to other authors about what
Hang on,
happened?
I will show you. Oh, hang on, let me grab it. So, can you see it? This is it.
Okay.
Okay. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But it says more YA romance or romantasy than what it is. And so I think people were confused by it, and I was confused on how to market it. And since it was my first novel, I didn't know what I was doing with marketing. So, I mean, I admit it. I had no clue. I thought I had a clue, and you get a lot of advice from people, and it's really hard to know what's going to work.
Sure.
And one thing I tried, which was actually a good idea, was as I would get reviewers' comments, I would try to play off some of what they said. So one person said, "This is a great Romeo and Juliet." So I started using that, and then I realized that is leaning too hard into the romance angle when there's so much more in this book.
Sure.
And, so it was just a very expensive, time-consuming learning process. So I could have spent thousands of dollars to go to a university to learn these things and maybe learn them better or faster, but I learned it through the School of Hard Knocks, and
Yeah.
here we are. So,
I mean, but you definitely learned your lesson, because I find your covers for The Girl Who Broke the Dark, and I'm gonna get this wrong, I think The Girl Who Learned to Write on Water. Is that
The
right?
Girl Who Wrote on Water.
Wrote on Water, yeah. Those are beautiful. They're great.
Thank you.
Yes, and they're there's like, you can feel the magic through the script. It doesn't have a lot of visuals, you would think, but just the cover exudes a certain kind of vibe that I want to pick it up. So I think you learned your lesson.
Yes. And actually, this cover is the second one that I tried for that book. And this is another little life lesson. So I was publishing this book the year my father was dying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And we were thank you. It's 5 years ago, but yes, thank you. And I was trying to make decisions on a cover right in the middle of that. And I had in my mind, I just need to move this off my plate and move on. And so I made a decision, picked a cover, which was even more completely wrong for what I was writing. And I should have said, I just need to put this aside till we deal with Dad.
Yeah.
So that's another little life lesson. If life is coming up, don't make big business decisions, because you'll be sorry. So,
That makes sense. That's really good advice generally, not just for writing books.
or anything in life, really.
Yeah. So I loved the book, by the way.
Thank you.
It's a great book. I recommend it to anyone who asks. And I am very curious to what inspired the story. I know it's kind of a spin-off thing, but it's Sleeping Goody. But like you said at the beginning, it's so much more than that. So what inspired it?
Well, since I was struggling so much with marketing the other ones, I thought, okay, let's try to lean into something that's selling. And fairy tale retellings are a big thing. So I started thinking about that, and Sleeping Beauty kind of grabbed my attention. And I got the idea, okay, let's flip it on its head. Let's her be the one breaking the curse. And then I was thinking, well, what else could I do with this? And I was just reading a bunch of obscure fairy tales, and I came across one, and I thought, ooh, this is what I want for the second half of the story, for the what happens after you break the curse. And I couldn't even tell you what that is. I've totally forgotten the name of it, but that was the idea. So that kind of gave me the gist of the story, what was going to happen.
Okay. So that second.
And I also had I guess I had come up with the name The Girl Who Broke the Dark, and I don't remember how that came about, but I had the name of the book even before I'd figured out the story.
Hey, that's
But that did make it easier to write the book to the name of the book, to write to that title, rather than the other way I did it with my first book. I wrote the book and then could not come up with a title to save my life.
okay. All right. Well, that's no, I get that, and sometimes that's a good strategy. That's I'm writing a book as well, and I kind of did the same thing. I found the title midway through writing it, and I'm like, okay, now I have to live up to the hype of the title. So
Right. Yeah.
so key themes are self-sacrifice and duty,
Right.
and when I think of Sleeping Beauty, that is not what comes to mind. So I'm just curious, how did you arrive to that, and what compelled you to explore these themes?
The reason I went into self-sacrifice is as I was developing Eliana, the main character. Here's this princess. Well, what is she struggling with? And her big thing is she's brought up to this duty. She's going to be the queen of the country, but that involves self-sacrifice. And the big issue to her is obviously marrying. Would it be a political marriage or something for love? And so that's where I started leaning into that idea, and how much being a leader really calls on you to sacrifice for yourself, because you have to sacrifice for the people you are leading if you are a good leader. Otherwise, you are tyrant or something else. But for Eliana to be this aspirational, inspirational leader, she had to be ready to sacrifice herself at different points. And one of the things she learns is people can tell you, okay, do this good thing. You sacrifice yourself to do this good thing and guilt you into it. And she had to learn when she was being manipulated and when this is actually the right thing to do.
Yes, our protagonist is very young through this series, and I thought that was an interesting move. Usually, princesses and fairy tales are often young. I don't know if that's a cultural vestige or what, but did you make her young because it was easier to put her through so many moments of self-doubt?
Yeah, it was easier to do that. And also just one of it fit more when I started thinking, okay, what is the limits of the magic system, right? So, oh yeah, you can't do this until you're older. So that kind of forced her into that spot of being ignorant of what she could really do with her powers.
Absolutely. And we're kind of skipping a little bit ahead, but I don't care. We'll just keep going.
That's all right. We can come back.
Yeah. Your magic system feels critical and has all these limits, which I love, because often people kind of go a little crazy with magic. And limits makes it have stakes and makes it feel like, something you have to quantify how you tackle situations. Where did you get this idea? Because the limits are costly. Like, they lose control of their body, like they're limp.
Right. Yes, they go numb. Yeah. How did I come up with that? I knew I wanted limits. I knew I had to do that. And I remember I was listening to this podcast, and they were just making fun of this magic system where you could just use it and nothing ever happened. And it's just like, well, who could ever defeat you if you're so, what's the word? You're impossible to defeat. So that, all right, we got to make this hard for these people. We've got to put a learning curve to this magic. You don't just use your power and can control it really well at the beginning. And then ways to tweak the magic. You could make it stronger, and then that has its own implications for you. So I made it kind of complicated on purpose, just so that it wasn't something that just anybody could use, or you can't use it at every minute. One of the things I'm dealing with in a later book, and I don't think this is a spoiler, is when they go into battle, you can't really use your magic because you have to concentrate. And if people are running at you with swords and spears, you can't be concentrating inwardly on your power. You've got to do something so they don't cut your head off. So that's one of the limits that comes into play.
And the whole idea of amplifiers, I found that, where did you get that? That was so cool. I've never read anything like it, and I loved it. I love the idea of amplifiers.
that came out of that came from Brandon Sanderson, actually. And if you don't know about this, or your listeners don't know, he teaches a creative writing class, and every so many years, and he's doing it this year, he puts all the videos of his lectures on YouTube.
Okay.
And it's very worth a while. But he talks a lot about how he creates his magic systems. And he was talking about using the senses and how nobody's really done much with taste. And I thought, okay, what could I do with taste? How could taste play into the magic? And then I thought, well, that would be a way to change how your magic works, or to amplify your magic in different ways depending on what taste you are experiencing. And from there, I took a while, but I was able to come up with a coherent system for that.
It was so well done. I loved the intricacy of it. I love her little pouch with all the things.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's nice.
You got to be prepared.
No, that was really cool, and I thought it was if there's something about your book, if there's one thing that I would say, is that the magic system, the way it works, is very. It makes the world feel very real, and it makes the stakes heavy and have some some gravitas to it. It's not just magic, and it's not just monsters. Which also, two things. One, your monsters are crazy. They're so fun. It's so hard to find unique new monsters, and you gave us so many.
I tried.
Where did you come up with these monsters?
Well, that's something interesting. So when I started thinking about The Girl Who Wrote on Water, I had originally envisioned a lot of the action taking place under the sea. That's not how it turned out, but that was my vision. So I was doing a lot of research into sea creatures.
Okay.
And so in looking at sea creatures and Googling scary sea monsters and all kinds of stuff, I was seeing all kinds of things. And I'm like, ooh, this could be a good monster. And this could be. So I'm taking these pieces. And if you ever do look at underwater sea creatures, there's some scary looking things out there.
Yeah.
Really strange looking. So yeah, I wish I could say I just conjured it up in my mind, but no, some of those things kind of were swimming around under the water, and I kind of sewed them together.
No, and this, yeah, I can totally tell you sewn it together, but it does have this Frankenstein, kind of, but that's cool because it makes your world stand out, and it, I read in your bio that you used to read a lot of grim fairy tales, and that you're a fan of the epic high fantasy kind of genre, and I can tell from your story feels inventive, it feels magical, it feels like it's a strong IP because of its monsters, because of its unique magic system, and because of the world building. I mean, your complex world with their kingdoms and the politics and it all, and it wasn't done in a preachy way. It wasn't like you exposition dumped us. As the book went on, more things unraveled, and I was here like, oh my God, how are they gonna get out of this? So I think it was very, very well done.
Thank you.
So how do you do that to all of your kind of fantasy elements? You kind of splice different things together. Is that your process for creating kind of like new world elements?
I wish I could say yes. It's like yes and no. Sometimes it just comes to me, like I know that this has to be there. In my first series, which was originally going to be a sci-fi dystopia, and somehow it morphed into fantasy. I don't know how that happened. But the magic came, it's just such a bizarre little random thing. I had a niece, a handicapped niece living with me, and one of my daughters sent some jewelry for her, some little costume jewelry because she liked beads. And there was this beaded dragonfly, the green and purple dragonfly. And I thought, oh, magic amulets. That's what my magic is. So it was just from that random little event that triggered the thought that built up into this whole world.
Okay. No, that's good to hear, because it's exciting when life gives you kind of this bed of creativity. Sometimes normal things can have magical consequences.
And I like using normal stuff because it does give that feeling that this could be real.
Yeah. And I have to say, Eliana was a very real character. She was a little bit bratty, like a princess would be, you know. I think that let's dive into the contradiction between Daria and Eliana.
Okay.
Because at the beginning, you know, I was there with Eliana. I was like, oh, this Daria girl, like, tell her to shut up.
Exactly.
But then, you know, I think Daria is a source of great strength for Ileana because Ileana is a very scared girl. She's actually very shy. She's very outspoken and she knows kind of sort of what she wants, but she's a very like trepidatious kind of gal.
Yeah. She's much more cautious.
Yes. Why did you make her that way? Like, talk to me a little bit about how you crafted that dynamic between those two girls and why did you did it that way?
I'll start with Daria. The inspiration for Daria, the starting point was somebody who likes to shock other people. That's the bottom line to her. So as I built her character, I keep going back to that. Whereas Eliana is much more of a people pleaser in her aspect. And she's really all about the duty. I mean, if I was her, I probably would have knocked Daria off the horse and left her there. But Eliana's just like, I'm going to suck it up and we're not going to create any international incidents here. So that's kind of where they are. So Eliana is much more of a restraining force on Daria, whereas Daria is much more of a, okay, we need to do this. We can do this, kind of a pep talk kind of person and the one that's willing to take the risk.
She's very brave.
She is. She is.
Daria is very brave, and towards the second half, where she's heading home, and all the things that happen along the way. I mean, I found her to be a very, very admirable leader, and I was very pleasantly surprised because I was rooting for her, and I was scared that she would disappoint me.
Things are going to go badly for Daria.
Yeah. And no, but she's a really strong leader, and you know, you chose to kind of give us her POV a couple of times, and I was very pleased with, you know, because she has that. I get what you mean about like having that shock value. She wants to shock people, but inside that kind of a little childish thing, she's a very mature and responsible girl. And she's not even 18 yet, so that was impressive.
She turns 18 close to the beginning of the next one.
Okay.
So she's just a few months younger than Eliana.
Yeah. I do think that your book, since we're on the subject, has a lot of feminist undertones and like a lot of talk about sexism, and even the magic system has a little to do with that and how it's managed. Is that something that you incorporate in all of your stories, or is that something that you wanted for this one? How does that fit into everything?
That's really fascinating to me. You are not the first person who has talked about that. That was not at all in my mind when I wrote. I was more looking at the human problem with Eliana being faced with duty versus desire. And that's something that plays out for Daria too. Duty, you know, I have to do my duty, but what do I really desire for myself in life? I worked in some of that, we'll say suppression of women, because that is more culturally what would go on in those cultures. That's just how it was. And them dealing with the reality of it. I didn't want to lean hard in it because I didn't want to lean on male bashing or anything. I wanted to have these girls have relationships with men that actually supported them and wanted them to achieve what they could, whereas the rest of the culture may not be so supportive. So yeah, it is funny to me how that came out, and I really wasn't intending it to be that way.
Really? Oh, well, that's fascinating because I was gripped by that, and I just thought it was such an interesting exploration. You mentioned cultures, but you know, it's a fantasy world. What cultures did you use to inspire your world?
Well, Eliana's kingdom was ancient Greece,
Okay.
and that comes out a lot in the names and the talk of the theater and the philosophers. Syria is kind of a mix between the Byzantine Empire and kind of older Turkic culture.
Okay.
And the thing with the Byzantine Empire is it was very cosmopolitan. Because it was an empire, they had a lot of cultures mixing in it. So that's more of a mixed experience. When you get to the underworld, I modeled after some of the Caucasian lands like Ossetia and Georgia, in between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea.
Okay.
And one of the things I found this book called Tales of the Narts, Narts, obscure little book, but it was folk tales from those regions, and they were fascinating. Now, a lot of it was kind of like a magical fairy tale, like somebody comes home and the chicken starts talking to them, that kind of thing. But there was a lot of character things and cultural things that I borrowed to create that underground world.
And I didn't know what to expect of the underworld. They kept talking about going down there, and I was like, what are we gonna I had no, and I applaud you for that, because I had no frame of reference. I was like, I had no idea what was gonna happen, just like Eliana, right? Where
Right.
there was all these rumors and stuff, but I was like, there's no way there's gonna be half goat, half fish people in there, like but at the same time I was like, well, why not?
You never know.
Exactly. So safe to say that the second half of the book was my favorite part of the book. Absolutely, without a doubt. I'm not even like, Malk was such a fun place, and the characters like Shardona.
Oh, yeah.
What? Like, Shardona and Adakis is how Adakish.
Mm-hmm.
They are, for me, true evidence that your ability to create polarizing and different characters, that's your skill. Because walking through everyone we met in the kingdoms and then going into this deep underground world and the characters there, the range that you showed was really impressive.
Oh, well, thank you.
Where did you get the idea for Shadona? She's so sassy and evil and nice, but evil, but
Well, I knew that I wanted a trickster kind of character, that I needed somebody to do that. And in the Tales of the Narts, there was this trickster named Sherdone. It was a man.
Okay.
And I thought, and he kept saying to people, what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? And that's what she keeps saying. I'm like, okay, I need this. I need to borrow this. And that was part of it with Sherdona. And I just kept leaning into her being this strong leader, but she's out for herself.
Yeah.
And so she'll help Eliana, she'll help Adakish if it helps her. And that's where I went with her.
She calls her my sunshine the whole time. What is that? I didn't understand. I have theories, but like, why?
It's kind of like, I meant it to be a little bit patronizing.
Yeah. Okay.
Like you would say to a small child, there, dearie, or kind of like a teacher might say sarcastically, oh, dear heart,
Okay.
you're being stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I meant that to be.
Because I mean, there was a moment where, sorry, and I forgot his name, because characters I don't like, I forget their name. That's my one flaw as a reader. Oh my God, her betrothed.
Oh, Istvan.
Istvan, sorry, I despise him, obviously.
Good, everybody else does too.
I despise him. And so yeah, I have this flaw. My brain, when it hates a character, deletes it. And this happens to me in every interview where I'm like, oh, that one character I hate. Damn.
That really awful one.
Yes, so Istvan. He says something about little girl. He like throws out a comment.
Mm-hmm.
And Shadona's bothered by that. So I wonder if she's being patronizing to Eliana, but it's also being bothered. How do you explained that through her.
Oh, interesting point. Yeah, so Shardana, I think she thought that Istvan was just being overly insulting. And it's one thing for Shardana to be a little patronizing of this overworld girl princess who thinks she's just gonna waltz in there and get someone to help her find the prince. Whereas Istvan, she just didn't like that. And being a strong woman leader herself, she didn't like this idea of Istvan, the betrothed, calling his intended little girl. That just doesn't bode well for a future relationship.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And what some of my favorite interactions were between Istvan and Shardona.
Yeah.
So good. And
They were very fun to write. Very fun to write that.
the way she tricked him, and I just love that he had, later you realize like the extent of his power and the extent of his influence, and then just thinking, to be crude, just thinking of him just shitting himself for a whole day. Absolutely adored that. I love that because it's such a, it goes back to, yes, it's a fantastical world, but you've managed to create these like real world stakes that makes it feel real. Like, yes, you could be on this wonderful adventure, you could have 50 soldiers, you can have all the swords, all the magic, but if you get food poisoning,
Things aren't going to go well.
it's not going to go well. So I thought that was very well done.
Thank you. Yeah, I think about that a lot. Why don't people go on these quests and they never even catch a cold? And part of the problem is, well, nobody wants to watch somebody lie in a tent sniffling for a day and a half because they can't move. So how do you get people sick that doesn't slow down the story?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that just adds to it. I feel like there's ways to write it that, like you did, where the plot can keep going, but there's also like this kind of comedic undertone that can also play into the part, because she couldn't have gone to the tower and lifted, I'm not, spoiler alert, and lifted the curse if he wasn't back there
Incapacitated, yeah.
having a rough time.
Yeah, he needed to be out of the way for a little while.
We needed him out there, not being all over her. Which brings me to the prince, the actual prince,
The real prince.
the real prince. He's lovely.
Yes.
He is lovely, and he has gills, right? Okay, I thought that was so cool because a part of me assumed that he was going to be human, full human. And when he wasn't, I was so happy because it solidified and cemented the multi-species dynamic of this. It made the monsters more real because now the monsters were allies too. And so, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with them, but they're kind of into each other, which I don't blame them. Which brings me to, wait, hold on. Before we continue that thought, I have a question about Evander.
Oh, Evander.
Evander, sorry. So Evander, I was devastated by the story how he died, right? And this is the beginning, so I don't feel like this is a spoiler. Did you intend him to be dead from the beginning, or was he a plot device?
I'm trying to remember when I added him to the story. I guess it was fairly early on. I wanted to have Eliana to have a little bit more reluctance to this idea of getting married than just, I'm only just turning 18 or whatever, but to have this lost love, and also some leverage her parents could use on her, like, look what you did, you used your magic and Evander died, and that wasn't cool. So yeah, I think he was doomed from the start. Sorry, Evander. But
Because, okay, so this is a thing though. I thought about, because her parents knew about this curse the whole time. And I mean, if Evander hadn't died, what would have been, was Evander going to sit there and watch her kiss A prince?
He was probably going to have to.
Okay.
But I think, you know, of the two of them, suppose he hadn't died,
Yeah.
Evan would have handled the whole thing much better than Istvan.
Oh,
Evan,
absolutely.
it would have been a whole, she would have just gone down there, woken up the prince, said, see you around. I'm going back to Mitos with my guy here and have a nice life. But, or she would have tried to do that. She couldn't. But, yeah, Evander would have been a much different kind of ally for her in that whole thing.
Okay. Okay. Um, Question. Does does the big bad guy have limits to his magic as well?
The
And if
big
it's a
bad,
spoiler, then it's fine. You don't have to tell me. But
he does have limits. The thing with him is he's really, really old. So he's,
okay.
you know, well over 1,000 years old, maybe closer to 2,000 years old. And so this first, and even after he was exiled, he's been working on his magic and figuring out how to expand it and amplify it. So whereas most people, they say, okay, this is the power I have, and I'm going to learn to use it, and that's all great. This guy's been just figuring out, how do I accumulate more and more and more. So eventually there are limits, but his limits are much further down the road than anybody else's.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Um, that makes a lot of sense because he feels like such a, and I applaud you because the cool thing about your story, I thought it was so, one of the things that made it feel so fantastical and fairy tale-esque is that we had one big bad guy. Like from the beginning, he's like, we hate this guy, right? There's no options.
Right.
But that was clever because it distracted me as a reader from all the little villains that are around. And, you know, I didn't, when the bandits came along, I was like, oh, right, you know, this is a living world. Obviously, it has bandits. Obviously, it has disgruntled citizens. You know, it's just, it was really a really good way. Usually, fairy tales lean into this big bad guy. They don't give us anything else. But you didn't do that. You gave us a big bad guy to distract our attentions, and then you weaved into all this animosity and villainy that kept popping up when I least expected. So I thought that was really well done.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the things I was thinking about, how when we just look at the news today, our country does things in our best interest, somebody else does things in their best interest, and they don't always
Align.
align. And so thinking about that with all the other people living in this world, they may not like the royal family. They may want to do something else. They may want to be independent. And how are they acting? Or they just may want to rob somebody of what they have.
Yeah, and I thought, you know, one of the pieces that took me for a whirl was at the end when they were fighting Istvan. And he was pulling, you know, he was like, and your family came over to my territory and conquered, like, and he was like airing out this 1,000-year-old dirty laundry, you know?
Right.
And that, you know, and that was really cool. I think that was a very good point, you know? Like, just because the victor is so easy when you're the victor to like get over it, you know? But
Right.
but he held a strong sense of resentment that even though we hate him,
Yeah.
kind of vindicated him a little bit. For me, at least, I was like, okay, well, this is not like you're not just a evil or bad or doing all this trouble for no reason. You have baggage.
Yeah. I mean, he's not just evil for evil's sake. He's doing bad things to Eliana because he believes he's justified. He's the one in the right, and she's the one in the wrong.
Yeah. No, and that was, again, it's another example of how you didn't expose this information just to expose it. We learned through dialogue and through the action scenes. Brings me to my next point. Your action scenes are divine. Do you map them? How do you walk me through? Because action scenes, I find them quite hard, right? Because there's a lot going on, and you gotta get the beats right so that people know what's actually happening and that it feels like it has consequences. How do you craft your action scenes?
That is really hard. Because I'm the kind of person, when I'm reading a book, a lot of times if the action scene goes on too long, I'm skipping. I'm skipping it. I'm like, oh, let me go back. Well, what happened? And part of it is I need to know what happens now. I can't watch them kill 4 more guys. I want to know who wins this battle. But sometimes when I'm watching a movie, it's like, oh, the action, oh, stop fighting already. Let's get on to what happened. So I'm always a little scared about writing action scenes. And maybe because I approach it with such trepidation, I'm very careful to have it move along and have everything that happens mean something. That we're not having a lot of extraneous death and blood and whatever, but it's the things I focus in on are the important beats in that scene. And so I give the reader enough to know, oh yeah, 65 guys are fighting, but here's the key guy, and this is what he's doing. Or this is how the main character is reacting to it.
Yeah. No, I can tell, especially that last action scene where Eliana and Isman and his guys and the prince, and that's the there's a lot of great action scenes, but that one was the one that I underlined and that stood out. Tell me about the prince, because I'm kind of low-key obsessed with this prince. And he's super cute and super nice, and he wants to kill her. He has to kill her.
He has to.
Who's your inspiration? Where did this, because I feel like he's very different than every character in the rest of the book, even Eliana. Where did he come from?
Where did he come from? Well, I did not want the story to be, she wakes him up and everything is swell. There had to be this twist to it, and that was the twist to the story. But I didn't want him to be, I really was interested in that conflict between I'm compelled by a curse to do something and every fiber of my being is fighting that. And he also, I don't remember if it came out in that book or if he tells Eliana about it in the next one. He had 3 days warning from the big bad guy that he was going to be cursed. So he and his parents spent 3 days figuring out, what are we going to do about this?
Okay.
And it was in that time that he vowed within himself, no matter what happens, I am not killing the person that wakes me up. I'm not doing it. And that was his self-sacrifice. He was willing to die rather than do that. So I took that, and then I thought, he's kind of have to be a little bit pessimistic of a guy, because here's this guy, he's going on in life, everything's great, and then he's cursed. And not only does he have the mercy of just being cursed and that he doesn't know, he has 3 days to agonize over it. So when he's woken up and he's confronted with this new reality, and another thing I bring out in later books is he wakes up, it's been 100 years for him. Everybody he knows is dead. So he's kind of in a pessimistic, kind of depressive thing of, it's like my parents just died. All my friends just died just a minute ago. Whereas to everybody else who are their descendants, they've been dead for a long time.
Okay. No, that's very heavy, and I feel like he didn't have time in this book to process that. So I'm very interested to see him process it on later books, because it is something heavy. Like, he asks him his age, and he has to be like, well, I'm technically 120 years old.
But really, I'm not.
Really, I'm 20, that kind of thing. Which I thought you put a lot of emphasis on that, on the age thing. Because Isman was 27 or something like that, 28. Okay. For me, for those cultures, 27 to 18, and even my parents are 15 years apart, not the most common thing, but it is like something that I just thought it was really interesting how much emphasis you put on that. Why was that?
I did that because a lot of people are very critical of fantasy books with the big age differences, and especially hundreds of years. So yeah, Istvan, I wanted him to be significantly older that you could maybe give him a pass for being a little bit domineering of her because she was so much younger, but not really. But I wanted it to be very clear, Adachi, even though he was 120, he really wasn't 120. That really emotionally and by experience, they were much closer in age.
Yeah. Yeah, and Adaki, you know, does does he like Ileana the moment he sees her, or does he grow into liking her?
Oh boy, I don't want to tell you that because that's a big reveal that she gets later. They duke it out later in another book, and yeah, that's a big
Um,
thing. That's a big moment for her.
okay. No, good, good. Don't spoil it because I want to keep reading. And their romance is very beautiful and weird, and yeah, don't spoil it because I want to feel. I want to have all the feels. Yes. No, that was. I didn't know if she was gonna get any valid romances in this story. I don't know. You say you don't write. You don't write spice, right? You don't write. You stay out of that. You don't write any like actual.
Right. I keep it all very clean. I leave it up to your imagination to whatever. Yeah, and in the other series, I have a couple um, fade to black scenes, and it's up to the reader to imagine what they will.
And is that because you originally wanted to covet the YA scene, or is that just a preference as an author? You don't get into that stuff.
Yeah, that's just a preference as an author to go that way.
Okay. But how, I guess, you know, because I think they're a great couple and there's a
Right.
lot of like tension, right? Between them. And I can just imagine once they get out of all this rubble
Yeah, that's
and they
exactly
take a
right.
shower,
Once they get all the dust settles.
like I want to, their chemistry and their tension and their morals, and they actually are aligned in a lot of things. I would be interested in their romantic development. I don't need to be behind closed doors, but are we gonna get that? Are we gonna get some like not spicy, but like some tension, romantic
Yes.
heart
Yes.
heartbeats?
Yes. 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 They things do progress.
Okay,
Of course it can't go smoothly all the time,
of
but
course. Um,
and Shardana kind of throws a monkey wrench in there.
yeah, yeah. She's an instigator. I love her for it. She's such a rabble rouser.
She is. She is.
So I want to talk a little bit more. I don't want to keep talking about the story because if to whoever is watching either on the live right now or on YouTube when I post the episode, I want them to have the full experience. I don't want to ruin it for them, but I do want to get into your headspace and learn more about your process.
Okay.
What is your favorite? Like first, let's start. Hold on. Let's hold back. What's your process? How do you write a book?
I'm on number 7, and I'd say I've been through at least 19 different processes.
That sounds accurate.
12 of them for the first book, but I'm starting to get a better handle on it. So what I try to do when I'm starting a brand new book and a brand new series, because obviously the second in a series, it's a whole different deal. I really try to lean into what is the story? What is the thing about this story that's going to be compelling to a reader, that's going to really want them to read this book? Some people talk about the hook or the one-line elevator speech. I'm trying more and more to lean into that, to have a solid story idea. And part of the reason I do this is there are some books that I have read over and over and I have loved them. The writing is bad, the characters are cheesy, but I am so caught up in what's going on, I don't care. So I'm thinking, okay, if you have that great concept, the reader's going to forgive a lot. Not that you're going to deliberately stress them, but that's what's going to really make somebody fall in love with it. So I try to lean into that, and I get the major beats of the story. I might know how it starts and at least how it ends, and maybe a few things in the middle, just enough so I know where it's going. And then I work on the world building and the magic and the cultures, and I don't go deep into this. I also discovery write my characters. So like Daria, she likes to shock people. That and that she was the heir to the empire. I mean, that was about all I knew about her when I got going.
Okay.
So she developed over time, but the rest of it, the world build, I do some world building. I have the basics of the magic and the basic cultures together. And from there, then I get a rough outline of the whole story, scene by scene, what happens.
Oh, wow.
Then, so I know I am definitely a plotter. Now, I do have to say, a lot of times I get to writing a scene and it starts at point A and ends up at point Z when really my outline ended at G. So,
You have a mind of their own.
yeah, I mean, it just goes and the characters take over. They really do. So after a rough outline, I do a scene outline for every single scene, just the major beats in that. And a lot of times as I do that, I'll say, oh, these 5 scenes, that only needs to be 1. Or this scene really needs to be 2. So that helps me break it up. From there, I do my rough draft and I blast that out as fast as I possibly can just to get the words on the paper. And some people talk about people wearing white clothes in a white room, and that's kind of what I end up with a lot of times. I mean, it's what they did and what they said. Every now and then some description, but that's basically it. And from then, it gets into that over and over process of rewrites, getting feedback, and feedback from live human beings is priceless. Feedback over and over, eventually getting it to an editor and a proofreader and out the door.
Where do you get this human feedback? I can't buy that in the grocery store.
Wow, I wish you could. I have been participating on a platform called The Right Practice for many years. So every week I post a scene, and then usually 5 or 6 people give me their feedback. And some people, sometimes it's 10, it just varies week to week. But there are people, we've been reading each other's stuff for years. And so they know the whole series. They kind of know how I write. A lot of times when you read somebody new, you think, oh, I don't like how they're doing that. But really that's their voice. So it's hard to adjust to that. But that's been priceless. And then from there, sometimes we'll beta read for each other the whole thing when it's done. But that's been one great thing. I belong to the South Carolina Writers Association, and from there I find people. I've not had great luck with Facebook groups doing that. I've gotten a couple beta readers, and here's a little difficulty is some people think a beta read is this is the proofread version ready to be published.
Yeah.
And so I've had people tell me I don't know how to use commas. Well, I didn't send you the edited version. And other people see it as I really want some high level reader feedback. How do you feel about the story? Is there some place in this that bores you to tears? I want to know that now before I send it to an editor. So that's kind of a difficulty of really making sure you and your beta are on the same page as to what you want.
No, that's good advice. That is good advice because I feel like feedback is such a critical part of writing, and it's often the hardest part of writing.
Yes.
Which brings me to my next question, which is, what is your favorite part of your process or about writing a book, and then your least favorite part about writing a book?
My favorite part is the part I'm not working on. So seriously, when I'm writing the first draft, I think, oh gosh, editing would be so much easier. When I'm editing, I'm like, oh, I wish I could go back to a first draft and just do that, vomit dump onto the page. But I really have to say the research and the world building is my favorite because I can spend hours just reading about something and saying, oh, this is cool. And I want to use this, and this might be a great line, and just world building where you can just sit down with a glass of wine and just conjure up stuff.
Yeah.
That I think is my favorite part.
Okay. And the least favorite?
Probably whatever I'm doing today. Least favorite. I think it's when I'm really getting into that 3rd or 4th draft. That's where I'm starting to despise what I've written. And I think like, okay, I'm getting really close. It's like feeling like, there's nothing I can do to make this better than like a B plus, but I want to get it to an A and I just can't get there. And this is just too hard and I want to give up. That's kind of where I am in the third or fourth draft. And that's usually when it's time to go back and reread some reader feedback that was encouraging. Or conversely, go read bad reviews of books I've loved and say, okay.
Okay. Ooh.
Okay, so this is an art form. I don't have to please everybody. I just need to create a good story.
That is such a great tactic.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
to a book you love and read the 1-star review.
Yes.
I will use that.
And that's also good to do when you get your own 1-star reviews, because you can say, see, I'm in good company.
Okay, well, we kind of segue into, and we've hinted a little bit about how do you handle feedback and how much reviews affect your mental state as an author.
That's something I'm learning to deal with. I have to keep going back to how this is an art form. So my first book, I got this wonderful review. They said the quote was impressively original. And then the next review I got was, there is nothing original in this book at all. So you just have to say, okay, this is art. This is how the reviewer is reporting how it felt to them. That has nothing to do with my identity or my worth or anything else, or my story's worth. This is how it resonated with them. It's like the spice, no spice. I mean, some people just, no spice to them is just deathly dull, and other people, it's a distraction or something else. And that's how it resonates. So you just have to say, this feedback is how it resonated with them. They're also to take it as, this is that person's opinion. This is not cast in stone. This is not the law of the universe. This is their opinion. And having been on a feedback platform a long time, I've really learned how to try to phrase my feedback. I've read some really bad stuff, but I have to honestly, I have to dig deep and say, okay, how can I encourage this person? What are they doing well that they can lean into? And then gently say, you know what? You might not want to type in all caps because it's very difficult to read, or something to that effect.
How do you, okay, this is a 2-part question. One, how do you feel while you're waiting for your editor to destroy your manuscript? And 2, how do you react and how do you process that mountain of red when it comes back to you?
So the first part is I immediately am working on another project.
Okay.
So right now, the way I'm doing it is on Mondays, I work on a scene from book 4 in the series. The next 3 days, I'm working on, I'm working on editing and revising book 3. And then Friday, I go back to book 4 and post that up on the forum and look at critiques. So I've always got another project going. I might be working on short stories. I might be working on something else. As far as processing the feedback. So after the first read where I want to throw things through the window, then I put it down for a day or so. And I come back and usually calmer. And I look at it and say, the question is, do I agree? Does she have a point? And a lot of times, as much as I hate to admit it, she has a point, and that needs to be fixed. And part of it is I think I'm so close to being done and you're giving me all this work and I have to get beyond that. It's I need to do what it takes to get the story right. And if that means more work, it means more work. So yeah, processing is hard. I can tell you, if somebody writes me a critique and says, show, don't tell, that really makes me want to throw things. Because I feel like we all know that. And show versus tell is a choice, right? It's an artistic choice. Explain to me why you think this is the time for more showing.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I agree with you. That is a really good point. The whole show and tell dynamic between editors, because you're right. Sometimes I want to tell you, I want to throw it up in your face and make sure you read this because this is going to be critical. And it's not the right time to show you. There's no way for me to show you. So that is a really, That is a really good point. What do you think can think of an example in The Girl Who Broke the Dark where that was critical to tell and not show?
Oh, wow. I think at one point I used it when I was trying to get her from one point to another, rather than give a play-by-play of, I think going from Shardana's tower to Adaki's,
Mm-hmm.
we don't need to see every step of the way for that, however long that was, day and a half journey. Just, I'll give you a couple sentences of narration that she's there. And a lot of times I do that for pacing. The reader doesn't want to see all that.
Yeah. No, and I agree. I'm glad you mentioned that because I thought them, we have gotten through so much. That poor girl. We had been awake for hours and now we were going to this guy's tower and I was exhausted. She was exhausted. And then you just gave us some beats, but they were enough for me to be afraid of our surroundings. And like I was kind of a little on edge, like, oh my God, are we going to get attacked again? Are we going to? So it was well done, I think. That was a really good example of like, yeah, we were on this long hour and a half journey from where they were at that time to the tower. But I would have hated if you put me through 7 pages.
Right. The water is dripping down the cave, and it's just like, no, just get there. Just get there.
Yes, and I was so antsy to get there. I'm like, I need to see this prince. Where is he laying? How's the bed? Like, I had so many questions. I was just like, if we don't see this prince now.
That's funny.
That's a good example. So what has been the most rewarding moments in your career? Because you've published 7 books. And that's a lot of books.
It's amazing to me.
Yes, that is incredible. Well, first of all, since we were talking about like editing and all these highs and lows, what does it feel like? I haven't been published yet. So what does it feel like when your book is out there the night before? Like to walk me through all these sensations.
It's kind of surreal because you've worked so long. The first one I worked on for like 10 years.
Wow.
And it's done. It's totally done. And then people actually liked it. I mean, that's just because as writers, we do all this work by ourselves. And is anybody going to like this? And I think that's why getting feedback along the way is so important, is to get some validation that people do like it. But yeah, as a self-publisher, it's just kind of, you get on Kindle Direct Publishing and you upload your book and you upload it wherever else and you hit send and there it goes. And all you can do is hope that people like it.
So obviously this podcast is about self-publishing and about the choice of self-publishing. I ask this to every author. Why? I mean, your books are high caliber. They're well edited, well written, good stories, amazing characters. Some would look at your work and say, why isn't she querying? Why indie authorship? Why self-publish?
Why? I did investigate the idea of querying and I did try to write queries, and that's a whole nother skill set than writing a novel. And as I researched it and this idea of sending out hundreds of queries in the hopes that maybe in a year somebody would pick me up and maybe get rejected. If I was lucky, I'd get a rejection notice, usually get nothing. That just felt soul destroying to me. It just felt like, I don't know if I could handle this. Just like, no, I'm not doing that. And also, I do know that a lot of agents, not all of them, but a lot of agents want, when they pick up a new author, they want somebody that's going to make a career for decades out of this. And I don't know that I'm going to want to do this for decades. So now that was when I was beginning. Now that I have 6 books out, somebody might be interested in new work because they know that I'm serious about producing. But there are other things with being traditional that I wasn't sure I wanted to do. And one is, if they pick up a series, they expect a book a year. And while I've been able to do that, I don't know that I want to commit to somebody else that I'm going to do that. And then I heard this fun fact not too long ago, and hope I can quote it for you, but something like a 19% of traditionally published books sell less than 12 copies.
That is crazy. Less than 12?
That's, if I'm remembering right, but it was 19%. Even if it's 100, all of my books have sold more than that with my incredibly tiny marketing budget. So, and I'm not in bookstores, and so it just said to me, I can do all the self-destroying work of querying for what? And to do a lot of the marketing myself, because I don't have any illusions. Most of the marketing money goes to the big name people.
Mm-hmm.
And so an author like me that's picked up, I'm the C-list author, they may get me in a bookstore and arrange a signing or two. But other than the validation of being part of their catalog, I don't know what they're doing for me.
Yeah.
So I'd be running around to bookstores doing signings and doing all this other stuff and being on social media. I'd have to do it all the same.
Yeah.
So now if they gave me an $80,000 advance, I would do whatever they said. But I don't know that I can count on that.
No, 100%. And I think that's where the conversation is going. And I'll give you an example myself. When I started this journey, I was aiming for traditionally published. Mm-hmm. And it was through TikTok and meeting authors like you and Jeremy Morang, James Zamudio, and all the wonderful people I have lined up to interview the next month. I realized that who cares about traditional publishing? It's kind of a dying thing because, as you said, you have to market yourself anyway. And you kind of sell more books when you have a community that you've built from the ground up than if some stuffy company tells you to buy my book, So I think you hit all the right marks, and it's very inspiring to hear you say that, because I think you're a very, very established author. I think you're.
Well, thank you.
No, I don't see you as like this random lady in a corner writing books. When I see your work, and as I read through it, and I'm excited to read more, you in my book, you made it. I've read traditionally published books that are way worse.
Well, thank you. And I have too.
So, so absolutely. It's kind of very inspirational to hear you say kind of what everyone in the room is thinking.
Yeah. I sometimes still feel I would love to be validated by a big name publisher. So many people, when they hear I write, oh, who's your publisher? Me. And you look at me like, oh, well, isn't that nice? You have this little vanity hobby going. So yeah, it'd be nice to have that. But I think those days are going. And indie authors are making their money on the ebooks. Traditional publishers price ebooks pretty high because they want people to buy the hardbacks and paperbacks where the bigger margins are. So indie authors are able to slide in with ebooks at a little lower price and do quite well.
So your book is supposed to arrive today. I'm so mad that it hasn't arrived.
Oh,
By our interview, because I like to show the book and stuff. So I'm really mad at my courier before our interview. But I did buy your book as a trophy book. So to be in my shelf, because I have a little space on my shelf for all the people I interview, and I buy all their books.
Well, thank you.
But I do enjoy e-reading because I can sneak reading in weird moments between meetings and my lunch break, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
What has been your more successful market? Is it ebooks, or do people buy the actual book?
Definitely ebooks. No, my margins are higher on the paperbacks, but definitely ebooks has been where I've sold the most. Strangely enough, for a while, Google Play was my best source of revenue.
Wow.
And then that fell apart, but a lot of people said their Google Play income fell apart too. So I don't know why, and I haven't really investigated it. I've kind of put a lot of things on hold till I have the covers of that other series ready, and then I'm going to revisit a lot of marketing decisions I've made.
So you said something about the validation of finding a publisher, right? And in the comments, Jeremy said readership becomes hugely validating, and I'm sure that's true. But you have a lot of awards from what I've read, and a couple of questions come along that. One, isn't that like that is super validating, first of all.
Yes, totally. Totally.
And then two, how do you submit for these awards? How do you, because I wouldn't even know where to start.
That you ask a really good question. There are a lot of contests out there that are probably not worth much. Now, readers don't know that. So you could say, I won the Mossy Pine Book Award, and people say, oh, you're an award-winning author. Now, there were only 2 people in the contest and you took second place. They don't know that. It doesn't matter, right? And I'm drawing a blank. There is an organization, you can probably Google this. I think it's Alliance for Independent Authors. They did a little comparison of a lot of contests and their take on them. Now they are kind of down on contests because they say it doesn't directly impact sales, and that's true. But the validation and the motivation that it gives you is huge. The networking is great. When Flight of the Spark won a Reader's Favorite, and I went to the Reader's Favorite award ceremony, the guy that won the gold medal was there, and we really connected, and we have helped each other in many ways. And he's really taking off. So I'm like, I'm going to just follow you. But that's an invaluable contact. So, and in talking to other authors there who are also writing in the same space, learning from them, what are you doing to market? What are you doing? What worked for you? That's just invaluable. And then being able to say award winning. I can't say I'm a New York Times bestseller, but award winning is something that gets somebody to give me, it might have someone give me a second look, and that's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't know that about you when I read your book. And actually, funny enough, I did a review for Jerry Moran, which is the one in our comments right now, and you liked it so much that you sent me your book so that I would review it. And that's how we met. And I full circle to your point of like, you never know, you know, you do stuff and you just do them.
Yeah.
And things just pan out and you can make lovely connections and meet great people.
Right, right.
So how has been your marketing for like, is TikTok your main source of marketing? I've heard a lot of people very disappointed with Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff.
I resisted TikTok for a very long time, and I am sorry about that because TikTok has been better. Of all the social media, it's about the only one where I can say I for sure got sales from it. And it's really hard to track, so I have no idea about the others. The problem with Facebook is Facebook won't show your author page to people unless you pay for advertising. Oh. Even if people are following your page. If people who sign up and say, I want to follow this, they don't show it to them unless you're advertising. And Instagram is just, I don't know what it is with them. They just, I've been on Instagram much longer than on TikTok, and I have 3 times the followers on TikTok, and I get so much more engagement. So I don't know what it is with Instagram. But I think there's a value there. I think Instagram is more a way to engage with people that are already following me, whereas TikTok is really helping me find new people.
Oh, that's a good point. I can see that.
So, and also to use both of them, and I've not done a good job with this, of using it to promote signing up for my newsletter. So okay. That's something I need to lean into a little bit more. I have done Facebook advertising, and when I was hitting it hard, I was directing the sales to my own Shopify store, and that was working sort of well. Okay. I was this close to being profitable, and that was when I realized it was the cover issue was holding me back. So I halted all that. So I am going to go back to that because that was working really quite well.
From Facebook to Shopify, there was synergy there.
Yeah. So directing all my ads to Shopify.
Oh yeah.
That was working. Not quite profitable, but it really had the potential to get there. Okay.
Gotcha. Are you thinking maybe a TikTok shop for the future, or is that you kind of want to keep it on Shopify?
I'm going to stick with Shopify just to avoid losing my mind with too many things.
Fair enough.
But that might be a way to go for somebody. who doesn't want to mess with Shopify.
So are you profitable with your writing, would you say? And this is a question I'm trepidatious to ask, but it feels like you're very established. So I want to ask, you can say no.
No, I'm not profitable. And that's because things like editing are just so expensive that it takes a long way to get there. So I think now that I in September, I'll have a catalog of 7 books. That's when it starts to, I've heard 6, 7, 10 books. That's when you can start to really count on getting profitable, because your advertising and marketing obviously is geared for the first book. And then once that person loves your first book, they're more likely, they don't take a lot of nudging to buy that second book,
Sure.
and third, and so on. So that's the thing. Yeah, I didn't do advertising for a long time. I was advised, and I think this was good advice, don't advertise unless you have 3 books in a series, because it's very unlikely you'll make back your ad spend on just 1 book. But if you have people buying 2 and 3, then you're going to pick it up. Or if you're on Kindle Unlimited, the KU page reads may be what puts you over the edge.
You're not on KU though.
Mm-mm.
Why is that?
It's the rebel in me. I just really resented that if you're on KU, you cannot sell your ebooks anywhere else. That just did not sit well with me.
And where do you
And
sell?
the fact,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
and the fact that big publishers can be in KU and still sell the ebooks elsewhere, but the indie authors cannot. And I thought, all right, this is going to be my stand against oppression or whatever. I'm not doing it. And I think I have hurt my sales. I know that in the fantasy space, KU is huge, and that's how people make their money.
So where do you sell your books? You have your website, you sell on Amazon, you said something about Google Books. Where,
Mm-hmm.
what's your
And
range?
I'm on Draft to Digital,
Okay.
and they distribute to Barnes and Noble, Kobo, places around the world I'd never heard of, and to a lot of libraries. And I get a lot of library revenue
Oh,
from libraries. Yes, that's a big thing, is encourage people to order try to get your library to buy the book, because that's great revenue for the author.
interesting. I didn't know that the author got revenue from that.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. And more people that get your books.
Yeah. Yeah.
So does she publish on Amazon and Kobo? That was one of the questions from
Yes, I'm on Amazon, and then some of my books are direct on Kobo, and some of them are through Draft to Digital to Kobo.
What has been the most rewarding part of your career so far as a writer?
I think a big thing has been hearing from people what they think about the books. And sometimes from relatives, because relatives, they're either going to say to you, oh, your book is nice, and you know that they have no interest in it. But I have a nephew who loved all my books. Now, I thought I was writing more to women, but he loved them. And that's the kind of thing, and now I have a niece who we have talked about my books for years. She finally decided she wanted to read one. I mean, that's very, I feel like, they're finally taking me seriously with all this. But yeah, and reading some of the reviews, hearing what people say, people are very kind, and some of what they say is very insightful. And sometimes it tells me things like the feminist themes. I didn't know that was coming out, but now that they say it, I see it. So it's interesting how it resonates with other people, and that's very rewarding.
Nice. Yeah. You know, it's funny because I ask this question in every interview and everyone has a very similar answer, which just goes to show that, you know, I guess the most vulnerable part about being an author is kind of putting your work out there and then just sitting there with your hands in your
Please, somebody like it.
which is humbling. And I think it's very, it makes this profession seem very, I don't know, very noble. Would you say?
Mm-hmm.
A noble career or a noble thing to do?
I do. I think especially in the space that I'm trying to write, and there's like a lot of dark fantasy where everybody is evil and everything is bad, and that's not my thing. I'm really trying to write fantasy, and I'm going to butcher this quote. Somebody said we read fairy tales not because dragons are real, but to show us we can kill the dragons.
I love that.
That might have been Tolkien. I'm not sure. But that's kind of where I'm at. To write this more inspirational literature that, yes, you can go through really bad stuff and you can come out on the other side, not just surviving, but better for it.
Why do you write?
Why do I write? I honestly don't know. It's kind of like, what else would I do? I mean, this is what I do. And like I said at the beginning, I hated writing at the beginning. The first book I wrote was somebody else's memoir, and my arm was kind of twisted to do it. And in the process, I found I just loved doing it. I loved putting the pieces of the story together. I loved the big pieces of the scenes and the events, and the little pieces of what is the exact right word to convey my meaning. I fell in love with it, and to my absolute shock. And then when that book won an award, I thought, well, maybe I can do this. So then I get into the, okay, was that a one-off? Did I just get lucky?
No, you definitely have talent. But wait, because now, I'm a very nosy, inquisitive person. How do you get, with no writing experience, how do you get your arm twisted to write a memoir? How does that happen?
This is a long and convoluted story. So I was living in Russia. The church I attended in St. Louis would take a group to Ukraine and they would do a summer camp. So I would go down and help them and be another interpreter and help in their medical clinic. And there was this family there that talked about how they were persecuted for their faith under the communists, and they had the most incredible stories. So, okay, fast forward. I returned to the States, and this woman says to me, you need to write a book about that family. And I said, no, I don't. I'm not a writer. And she said, but you know the language, you know both languages, you understand both cultures, and you can write it so Americans can understand it. And I said, yeah, good. Good luck finding somebody. And through a bunch of events, I finally thought, okay, too many weird things are happening. I'm going to do this. And the weird thing is, somebody else had started writing a book about this family, and he died of cancer and made his daughter, who was a writer, promise on his deathbed to finish this book.
Wow.
So somehow we connected, and that started a great partnership, and I learned tons from her in writing this book, and she gave me all her father's notes, and then it just took on a life of its own. And there we are.
That is the craziest origin story to be a writer that I've heard of so far. You take the crown.
It's just like, why? I mean, and here's something crazier. So when I was in high school, I took this creative writing class because we had to take writing. And our teacher was really big on entering our stuff in contests. So I write this stupid poem, and it wins the award that year. And then they took the last 5 years and took the best of the 5 years. So it won in that. Okay, great. And then this college in Virginia offered me a full writing scholarship on the strength of that poem. And being a stupid 17-year-old, I'm like, no, I want to go into the health professions. I mean, my older self would say, go take the writing scholarship, get the first year done for free, and then decide what you want to do. But no, I didn't do that. I was not going to be a writer.
Wow. So really the writings were on the wall for you from the
there.
And you were just thrashing. You were
like, no, I'm not doing it. But, you can't get away from it. In my professional career in healthcare administration, you're always writing stuff. It's not making up fiction, but you're writing stuff.
Yeah.
And that skill of taking a thought and putting into coherent prose was there.
Absolutely. Wow. So writing has been chasing you your whole life, and you've just been running
the other way. No, I'm not doing it.
But it caught up to you, and we're all the better for it. So I'm glad you're a slow runner.
Yeah, I think in my earlier life, just being alone and writing, I couldn't do it, but now I can. So I don't know, maybe
Okay.
things change.
that's actually a perfect segue to my next question, which is what keeps you writing? What keeps you motivated when you're like at those dark moments that you're like, you know what, I'm the worst writer in the world. Everything I write is crap. I hate myself. I hate my computer. Throwing stuff out the window. What keeps you coming back?
Yeah, when you get to that point of, okay, I'm never going to be better than mediocre. What do I do? Part of it is I feel an obligation to my readers. For this series, I have 2 books out there. I have promised 2 more. I have promised an end to the story. I have to do that. And then I had made a goal to myself that I was going to write 12. I don't know why I came up with 12, but I feel like that's the goal.
12 books total.
At least.
Okay. That's a good chunk.
I keep thinking of other things. I'm thinking of, in between this series and the next, I want to write a series of 3 novellas, kind of as a bridge between them. And then I have a standalone with a whole different magic system that I keep coming back to. There's something wrong with that story, but I want to fix it and get that out. Because some of my readers thought it was the best thing I ever wrote, and some people think it was the worst thing I ever wrote. So I don't know. It takes on a life of its own.
Yeah. But I think like having your work be polarizing is a good thing, right? I feel like it's at least, making people feel something.
You want it to strike a chord for good or bad.
Yeah.
I have one review of Flight of the Spark where the guy, I forget what he said, kind of, it was well written, but that ending, he hated the ending.
Okay.
But I think that ending is what made it award winning. I think that's why the judges gave it an award. Because it was so brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did this TikTok a couple of weeks back where I asked authors and readers, what is the perfect ending, right? I'm writing the ending to my manuscript. I'm at 100K plus words. I'm finessing this ending, and I just wanted to see what crazy stuff came back. For you as a writer, do you have an ending style you gravitate towards, and then you're like, okay, now I have to finesse it, or what's the perfect ending?
The perfect ending for me is that there is always an element of hope. So if it's the end of the series, that's a lot easier because they've destroyed the big bad guy, and we're showing them in their new life that everything's great. But even in the dark moments of those middle books in the series, that there's an element of hope. Also, every one of my books has its own arc, and I want the reader to feel like that part of the story arc is concluded in a way that's satisfying. There's a lot of loose ends that takes them to the next book, but they feel like they read a whole story.
But if they decide to not keep going, they feel like they got a beginning and an ending.
They got a beginning and end to at least that part.
Okay.
Yeah, some people call that a cliffhanger, but to me a cliffhanger is you're fighting the big bad guy and your sword is raised. Okay, come back for the next book. That's a cliffhanger.
Yeah. No, I agree. And to that point, I think your book, I was like, no, it's over. What? No. We just got to the good part. But that's good. That's a good feeling to have. But you're right. I did feel like the story had a beginning and an end, and it was a satisfying conclusion. So I very much experienced that as a reader.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a great book. And I knew it from the beginning. I remember messaging you because every time I get a new book, I read the first couple of pages so that I can get it. I'm a mood reader, but I can manipulate my mood.
Yeah.
I just need to know what I'm signing up for.
Right.
And know, for me, being well edited, being well written, your voice, your style. I'm not going to commit to reading your book if I don't like the way that you write, because it's unfair to you and it's unfair to me.
Right.
I always read the first couple of pages. And I remember reading yours and saying, oh, okay, I'm going on a Disney trip. Because obviously I was thinking about Sleeping Beauty, and you write in a way that's very fairy tale-esque. Your prose is very, I don't know how to explain it. It's not amateur by any means. And it just feels like worldly. Like it feels like like a narrator quality, like when you have a narrator over in a story and it's like a very distinguished, like British, kind of, if I could translate that into, and I'm rambling a little bit, but if I could translate that into like the way that your writing feels, that's how I would describe it. But forget about how I describe it. Talk to me about your voice. What do you think your voice is? What author would you compare yourself to?
That's really hard for me to answer. Some people have compared me to Robin Hobb,
Okay.
and I've read several of her books, and they don't resonate with me. I mean, I look at it and I say critically, this is extremely well written. This is a very cool magic. This is this. It's not what I would put on my list of top 10. The Graceling, did you ever read those?
Which one?
The Graceling?
No,
That's an older book. I've been compared to that, and I kind of see that more because there is a little bit of that fairy tale quality to it, but still in the epic fantasy. And then Rebecca Ross, The Queen's, gosh, what was that one? Some of Rebecca Ross's earlier work, that too, that kind of a feel.
Okay. I'm gonna read a little. Let me see if I can find it. I'm gonna read a little passage here to show. I think this was brilliant because writing a curse, right, and writing things that feel ancient is hard. I think it's a hard. It's not that it's hard, but it's hard to get right. You know what I mean? And so I'm gonna. One of my favorite parts is when we're in the Sleeping Beauty mode, right? Where we're there and we're reading the curse, and she's trying to figure out how to break it, and it reads, "Here lies the cursed Tagablon of Malk, who only a kiss can wake. She who breaks the curse must be the unwed heir of Imitos. Her kiss will wake him, but the curse will linger. To fully break the enchantment, the Tagablon and Cursebreaker must remain alone together for 3 full days, as measured by the time of the Mitosians, binding them in marriage." And I thought that was really cool because I could just see this stone plaque like stuck in the bed with all this writing. And I think that you master a weird, again, it's hard for me to put into words, but I think that's a good thing. You make stories feel contemporary and ancient at the same time. And I think that is a great gift to have for the type of stories that you write, because they're sophisticated, but they're also very accessible. And if I were 14 years old and I would have found this book, it would have been my favorite book, because it really would have, because it's so adult yet so. These are children, right? Well, you're young adults, but they behave like children. They act like children. They make mistakes. They say things at the wrong time. They make wrong decisions, and yet the prose that stitches it together is very elegant. And so I applaud you for that. So maybe you can't find a comparison because there isn't one, and that might be the greatest gift of all.
Well, that would be a gift. There's got to be one.
It's well done. If you could give indie authors one piece of advice, what would it be?
I've thought about this a lot. I have to give more than one. One of them is invest in the craft. And this was something I learned the hard way. Just because I could write a report didn't mean I could write fiction. So invest in the craft and understand what some of the major things that go with it. Another thing would be to read till your eyes fall out, and a lot. If you are basing the way you write on your favorite book from 1822, you're not going to be writing something the contemporary reader is going to want. So make sure you're reading and what's selling, just so you understand the thing, and then get feedback. You need to find people who are going to give you honest feedback and be somewhat gentle about it, but tell you honestly, you really need to fix this or whatever. And also those people are going to be the ones saying this is really well done. And it's just too lonely of a job to not have that.
So don't go at it alone. Ask for feedback. is something that I hear a lot of people say, and it's kind of how I ended up in TikTok because I was alone doing it by myself, and it was very isolating and not very productive. Um, what would you say is the worst feedback you've ever received?
Oh gosh. I could go on and on. And actually, recently I got a bad review, so I did a dramatic reading of it for an Instagram reel. That was a lot of fun. I have gotten two other bad ones right lately, and they don't lend themselves well to drama. So I think one of them was you need to get somebody to teach you how to write sentences. Now, this person was complaining. I mean, after I calmed down and read it again, it was clear they were complaining that my characters did not speak in complete sentences. And I thought, people don't speak in complete sentences. So what world are you from? But anyway, yeah, that was one of the worst. Um, yeah.
Well, what's next for you? I mean, you said you're writing 3 and 4. You talked about a lot on novellas, but what is your main obsession right now? What are you doing? What can we expect from you?
Okay, so 3 is coming out September 1st. That's I promise. If it kills me, it's coming out. And then 4 a year later. And I have this little book I wrote here. This is True Confessions. I wrote this in 2013. It was called Read Me Before You Write. And the original title was 1001 Things I Did Wrong Writing My First Book. And that book is out there on Amazon, but please do not buy it because for the last 2 years I have been rewriting it and updating it with the 1,000,001 things I've learned since then. So, but I do want to get that out because I do not want people to flail around like I did and to tell them some of the things to help them make the decisions along the way. And the book isn't going to teach you how to write or how to market, but how to navigate a little bit all of the options out there so that you can focus better for what you want to achieve.
Okay. Have you achieved everything you set out to achieve when you started this journey?
No.
What's
No.
missing?
What was that?
What's missing? What have you achieved, and have you yet to achieve?
Um, I have written 6 books. That was huge. I think a big achievement for me is to just get profitable. And if I don't make a lot of money, that's okay. But I just want to be able to be profitable with it, just to pay, just so that it pays for itself. That would be great. And what comes along with that will be a bigger readership and more people enjoying the stories. And that's really why we do this. I can measure it by reviews and I can measure it by sales, but it's that reader enjoyment that they were entertained and inspired by what I wrote. That's the important thing.
Do you envision your books sometimes in the big screen, or do you daydream about them being adapted or things like that?
You know what's funny is some of my critique partners talk about that. When this becomes a movie, you need to pick this person for the. And I'm like, wow, I guess I don't know. That would be fun. That would be truly fun.
Yeah. And I think readers manifest their love through that way because I remember sending my first 3 chapter to this random person, and her response back was these beautiful mood boards where she selected the actors that she would want my characters to be played by. Like that was her response, and I didn't know what.
Oh wow.
And it was the first 3 chapters, and I was like, wait, what? So yeah, I think some people really that's the way they show their love for the story is like imagining it in that way. But I'm always curious if authors think about that. Like when you're writing, you're like, oh, if this gets adapted, I don't know.
I think more about the scenery. I mean, they would have to shoot here. They'd have to go to the Greek islands and maybe take me.
Yeah, can I come along?
Yeah.
In my direction. So shameless plug, where can we find you? How can we obsess about you? How do we bother you?
Well, bother away. So my website is evelynpuerto.com. And if you'd like to be on my newsletter, it's subscribe.evelynpuerto.com. I am on Instagram, the Evelyn Puerto, and I'm on TikTok, Evelyn Puerto. I think it's evelyn.puerto.aut. I was trying to get author in, and they wouldn't give me that many
Letters.
characters.
Yeah.
So, and before I realized that it was out, and I'd already published 3 videos, so okay, fine, that's what we are.
Okay.
And I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. I think author.evelyn.puerto. But yeah, I mean, visit my website, email me, send me a message on Facebook. It's great. It's all great.
Okay, so give me one-liner. One, it could be a piece of advice, it could be a piece of your book. Give me something for when I open the video that describes who you are as an author or what you would like others to know you by.
You ask really good questions.
Thank you so much.
I could think about this for days. What's a good one-liner? The thing that's popping into my head, and I don't know why, is you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. And I think that's one of the things my characters do, is they look into themselves and find the truth and act on it.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So thank you. This concludes our interview, our chat. I absolutely had a blast with you. This was so much fun. Love discussing the book with you.
This was great. Thank you so much for doing this. And I applaud you for what you're doing. I think this kind of podcast does just a wonderful thing for all the authors who participate and anyone who sees it. So thank you so much. And I am honored to be guest number 3.
Well, I hope it blows up, and I'm loving doing this. This is a labor of love, and I'm having such a good time. So I can't even, I'm being a little selfish because I'm having a blast over here. So.
And I do want to point out, I watched the first episode, and I want to chime in. I like pineapple on my pizza.
You know, I think we need to start making a poll here because I think there's more of you than I thought.
That's right. And add some Canadian bacon, and you really got something going.
You're not wrong. I'm there with you. My husband's actually waiting for me to be done so we can order pizza. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll
give it a try.
We'll give it another shot.
Okay.
But thanks so much for
thank you
for being such a fun,
great,
fun author.
Okay. Bye-bye.